Greetings! Happy Memorial Day, Talk TV viewers. Today I'm going on my walkabout in Maple Hill Cemetery. And it's a live walkabout. And unfortunately, most of the folks here are not. There's a few walkabouts today. And in case anybody is concerned, I went and took a look to make sure there weren't any live activities, live funerals going on that I might impose upon, because I don't want to do that today. This is about really the cemetery and the memorial and the Unspoken Wars, I call it in general. But some of the Confederate imagery is kind of hard to avoid, so we're not going to avoid it. We're going to start here because they are, after all, part of the Memorial Day services, as are all of the people who fight in the military. Some people might not like that, but that's the way it is. This is the plus a chance to revisit the Confederate monument that had been up on the square. I had advocated moving that thing 40 years ago, but I never have advocated destroying monuments or removing them completely. This is exactly a good place for this one. It's where he ought to be, and he's overlooking the Confederate war dead. And these are unknown soldiers in the Confederate Army. So part of my theme has been this is going to be sort of a casual walk. It's not going to be real structured about a lot of big names in history. I'm going to point out a couple of things. Originally, I was going to do a walkabout on some part of the cavalry there, I guess. Originally, I was planning to do two walkabouts, one in the old section, one in the newer section. And when I get into Maple Hill Cemetery, you end up realizing how big this place actually is. And it seems a little counterintuitive, but what I'm going to do today is actually do one, and as I say, it's not going to be real structured. This is some of the older areas of the cemetery. And burials here go back as far as 1820 or 22, not a lot of them, but to the very beginning of Huntsville. And so, I've been talking about doing the genealogy, and this is still in conjunction with historic preservation in Huntsville. This is probably the last walkabout I'll do during the month of May, but I got a little off schedule, and a couple more of those will come a little later on. This area, I know, has an ancestor of mine, and it's one of the oldest areas that was buried in 1870, and apparently in an unmarked grave. And it's become almost impossible to connect that person. All I know is that it was a male who was born, or who died in 1870. There's a possibility that I do know about where he might be buried, because it turns out I've got some in-laws, ancestral in-laws, in this part of the cemetery. But he had been married here, and then he had moved away from here. But there are some other of my ancestral cases that I can't quite connect yet either. But he came from back east somewhere, I know that, and I'm going to still be looking at it. I also know that my in-laws, or my grandparent in-laws, used to be buried here. But, well, they're still buried here. They're just not my in-laws anymore. I don't know, I guess that counts. So part of my walkabout today is gonna talk about some of the people that I've known, or at least crossed paths with. So I was also about to walk away from this section. Right over in that area As a matter of fact, right here, the closest stone to the cross, and exactly in line, is where Leroy Pope Walker is buried. And of course, he's the one who started the Civil War, they say, by giving the word to fire on Fort Sumter. It's impossible to ignore that part of Huntsville's history because, after all, he's the grandfather of Huntsville's founder, which was Leroy Pope. And we're going to walk past his grave in a few minutes, too. And again, this is some of the older sections. And there's a lot of trees here. Now, let's see. Look over in that direction. I think the chat's working. If anybody's out there and you want to say hello. Some of the monuments are, I think, bigger than the characters, and some of the characters, like Walker Pope, don't have the big monuments. That's interesting. I say I'm going to walk past his. Oh yeah, there we go. So as I say, instead of having two highly structured walks today, I'm going to do just one that's going to be a little bit inclusive of both sides. I don't think that has anything to do with Rhett Butler, but he had a nice big stone there. Got some other people out paying respects. This cemetery includes a lot of people that have been buried. A lot of them had service, so a lot of them are officially veterans. And then, of course, there's a lot of them that have died as a result of the so-called Unspoken Wars, which you want to read that last article I wrote on my website at Talk TV, TOCC.tv. And I'm going to walk right down through here. This is a real interesting mausoleum for Dr. Burritt. And I haven't even done my history work on him yet, but of course he was one that had the Burritt, where the Burritt Museum is up on Mont St. Mountain, shaped like the Maltese cross. Here, well, of course, in the Van Valkenburg family has been really big in Huntsville. I'll just say hello to them on the way. Here's where Leroy Pope is. Leroy Pope, the founder in Huntsville, died in 1845. And looked like they got a curious arrangement here. I noticed they seem to be put in here kind of tightly. And you know, sometimes they put them on top of one another, stack them. In some cemeteries around the world, they redig the graves and resell them. I don't know that that's happened here. I don't know that it hasn't. And let's see, I'm gonna walk back out this way to the regular little road here. And so anyway, this is the second time I've been out here in the last couple of weeks. And you end up realizing just how big this place really is. And it depends on who you talk to. One account says there are 80,000. Another account says there are 100,000 or more. And there certainly is a substantial potter's field. So you really don't know exactly how many. And unfortunately, there are a lot of unmarked graves and a lot of lost headstones, especially in the older sections. And talking about the genealogy and the Memorial Day, one thing I found out is I got a bunch of them in the Civil War. And as it turns out, a lot of them lived and a lot of them died. But on top of that, a lot of them fought on one side and a bunch of them fought on the other side. That's the one thing about it too, is it seems like I've got people that fought on both sides of every war. It kind of makes you stop and think about it, because, you know, brother against brother. But some of them were privates, and some of them were captains, and some of them were colonels, and some of them are brigadier generals, and there's at least one rear admiral in the bunch. Anyhow, off over in that direction is where Senator John Sparkman is buried. And I actually met him one time years ago when I was just a kid. I forget exactly when he died, but it's been 20 or 25 years, something like that. And his sister actually married a Casey as well, but I can't find out what happened to him. So I'm still looking. I'm gonna have to get one of them subscriptions, you know, to get all that extra information. And I'm not ready to put the money or put that many more irons in the fire, because I still have other things I have to do. And when I get to it, it'll be a couple of years. I'll do a more dedicated search for that, and several others. This is a newer part of the cemetery, but in some ways there's still a lot of old graves here. We're going to go all the way down here. The bad part of it is, I remember my granddad one time was gonna make a trip to New Orleans, and he told him if he died, he was already old at that time, and he told him just to bury him under an old oak tree so he'd have some shade. And that really differentiates in this cemetery as well. You see that the trees are in the older part, and in the newer part it's almost barren. Now way up in that direction, way up on the hill, is a newer area, but we're not going to even try to go way up there today. And when I get down here, I'm just going to mention a few folks, because historic preservation sometimes includes a newer generation. And that's in keeping with my theme of the Unspoken Wars. And since they're not here to speak their mind either way, I'm just going to make casual statements. Some of these here died in 1909, getting into this newer area. I have a previous page on Maple Hill with still shots, just regular photography. And once I get back home and put this on the actual website, not just on Twitch or YouTube, then I'll combine some of those links. But it's dedicated, that first page is dedicated to a friend named Daniel Fontenot. And God rest your soul, Danielle. She's buried over in this direction somewhere. I went looking, and boy, when you start looking at 80,000 graves, I've visited her grave before, but it's been quite a while. But when you start trying to find some of the newer ones especially, it's really kind of hard to do, because this area is so large. And really, the city doesn't do a very good job of putting markers down. Some of the other people that I've known, 3 of my classmates, my graduating class, are buried here. Jennifer and Jeff and John is the most recent. And wouldn't you believe that even my senior class sponsor, when I was class president of 1980, is actually buried here. That would be Joanne. And a girl I knew growing up named Debbie is buried off in that direction somewhere. Melissa Hiley is buried out here. She used to be in the public eye a lot, working with homeless people. And one of those was Marvin Poe. Marvin's buried out here. And it's kind of hard to get a scope on just how far back the cemetery goes. But the police officer, William Fred Clardy, is buried back there on a very, very, very back road, almost up there next to the mountain. So I'm trying to watch out today for anyone who might be, thought I saw, it finally looked like there might have been a funeral that came in, and they're on the very back row. I had one guy, and he said, you know, Jim, I got 150 people that are buried out there in Maple Hill Cemetery. So I'm gonna be on the lookout. That family's liable to show up anytime trying to bring another one in. They got so many out here. Well, that's about as far as I'm going to go into the news section, since I'm not going to get real structured with finding exactly who is where, and really just look at it in the larger perspective today of Memorial Day and the Unspoken Wars. And as Leroy Pope, we visited with earlier, had claimed he was a part of the Revolutionary War that he had served. And I have a feeling, you know, I don't know if he donned uniform or fired musket, but I imagine his claims have a certain validity to them. And I'll just bet there's a lot of other people out here that could say something similar. Whew. I don't get the light exactly right from this direction, but I'm going to show this perspective. These are actually some of the newer areas where people have been buried in the last 10 or 20 years. Some of the areas they opened up. I believe that's one of the markers that I had taken a picture of before. One thing I don't see much of is vandalism here. Hopefully there's not much of it, and there won't be. They're usually pretty good about keeping an eye on things and making sure that these people are not bothered in their rest. Here's an interesting cross. It's interesting to see the mausoleums, and it's really hard to try to go look at each and everything that's interesting and see what it is. It looks like there in the distance there's another mausoleum being built, and that's not the norm for nowadays. Nowadays it's mostly the regular stones. Let's see, I'm gonna go right on up this way. Speaking of the mausoleums, here is the Erskine Museum, a mausoleum. Robert Erskine, quite a famous character in Huntsville's history, built the Russell Erskine Hotel, or helped to, and was president of the Studebaker Company up in Indiana for a while. And the poor guy met with his undoing because of the Great Recession of 1929. And I think it said 1933 he committed suicide. But he sure does have a big, nice place to stay. But you know what? Once you're gone, it's just your old carcass that's there. And depending on what you believe and who you're in good with, I don't have any plans with Maple Hill Cemetery. I don't know, it seems like it might be a jinx kind of a thing, you know what I'm saying? A self-fulfilling prophecy. So at least for a little while longer, I'm not planning to go anywhere. You know, Ted Nugent says you never got to go. And I might want to talk to him exactly, see if he has a proscribed method for never having to go. Doesn't seem like there's any other way out, though. And so really where I walk about today has really mostly been in the older sections. Oh, I know one I forgot to mention. Tommy Battle's wife, Eula, died 2 years ago. He's the mayor of Huntsville. And she was actually buried on the same day as though she were an escort for the Confederate monument as it was being moved. Because on that day in October, Dale Strong, running for congressman, has done very well. He's the one that got that thing moving. And so hopefully that indicates that folks around here are in favor of that action. And I certainly am. Let's see, I don't think I forgot anybody that I meant to mention. Some of these monuments are not exactly where I remember them being when I had taken still photographs. I think this is going to be where I'm going to end the walkabout. I think that's one. No, that's not the one I took photographs of. But there's an angel there, so that's a good place to end it. Let's see if I can. Well, looks like I'm pushing the wrong button there. Let's see. Just trying to flip the camera. There, that'll do it. This is Jim Casey doing a live walkabout among the dead in Maple Hill Cemetery for this Memorial Day. Visit my website, make a contribution, and have a good day. Thanks for watching.